Hello, welcome. And I've got a good friend here, Ray, who I test a lot with and beats me a lot of green steel. Uh,
Hello,
very talented,
everyone.
very talented player. Got a channel as well that I'll link down below. And yeah, we're just going to sort of have a chat about going into the last chance qualifiers, like how we'd prepare for it. Of course, the one Europe's coming up at the end of this week, so I've definitely put the practice in to have the best odds at that. But yeah, sort of going into an event like this, you've got 5 rounds, best of three, single elimination each time. Sort of, how would you approach an event like this? Would you just think a strong meta deck would be a choice, a bit of spice maybe?
Um, I think we're in a very interesting spot without a proper client to test. I think the meta is very open. Um, I think we can take notes from the Vegas results, where you have like many rogues decks where if they get into a good pod, they can just somehow make it all the way to top cut. Like we seen there was like a red purple burn, and then we had a yellow purple hyper aggro.
Hmm.
So like I think like for a fixed first big tournament into a very open meta, these are very strong picks. Um, Me being a green steel player myself, I'm quite biased. So for me personally, I'll probably bring in green steel with a new spice. I've been testing a lot, so that would be my particular pick. But for everyone else that's not on green steel, I think like those kind of rogue decks are a very good option. Or we can take notes of some of the past recent tournaments in set six. I think green purple has been having a lot of success. Like Artifact is killing it, isn't
Yeah,
he?
which I really think that'll affect the what we see there. And green purple being live streamed with like 500 people watching it beat like green steel and
Definitely.
red purple, like everything. It's just beating everything. And yeah, I think there's sort of those three options you have. You have that comfort pick of right, I'm a green steel player or I'm a red purple player. I'm just gonna play one of those decks or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you could try get really spicy, like you say. You could get like a hyper aggro list and bring that to an event, or you could just go for what's right now looks the best, which to be honest with you is probably green purple. It's
Indeed, indeed.
yeah, it's got a lot going for it. I mean, and then you can go even further with that really, and this is sort of the high level plays you can do with TCGs. And I see a lot of players. I always sort of mention Ed is one good for this. He looks at what's popular and then looks at what he needs to beat what's popular. And we're seeing sort of the big Sisu being put into the red purple right now.
Yeah, I think Sisu is a very strong card right now because I think overall, like the game pace has gotten a lot faster. It sort of became like a genie meta with the
Mm,
purple cards, and then the Sisu kind of checks all the kind of everything that like the power two are under. I think Red Purple is definitely one of the strong contenders as well. If you're like a long time like purple red purple player, you follow Ed or Kendall. That's definitely a very strong pick.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, I've looked at that deck as well, but it
yeah.
seems like I'd probably enjoy it for all of the genie cheesing that you mentioned. Uh, and then you get into like a mirror, and you could play against someone who's got red purple, and like it's a veteran on
Yeah,
the deck, and you're just not really at that level. But I have been told right now, red purple mirrors, it's just basically who gets more genies out before that 8 costs Sisu comes down.
yeah, it kind of reminds me back in set two meta, where it's like whoever had the most surfer minis out, who can control the opposing surfer minis ends up winning.
Mm,
Which actually I think a card that we can bring back is Maui Fishhook.
yes, yeah.
Um, yeah, because back then that's how we dealt with surfer minis in a fast-paced meta where everyone's on surfer minis. But now Genie being on turn four is actually slower. And obviously, we can argue that Maui Fishhook isn't as great into certain matchups, but the fact that it's inkable, I think it's very flexible.
Mm,
So I think it could be a very good spicy tech if you're expecting to get into a genie war, and sometimes just relying on a top deck Elsa is probably not the best.
yeah.
Where having the hook, you can like cleanly answer these basic characters and just swing the momentum back because now you have yours to like apply the pressure.
Yeah, I mean, we were joking about it. We're testing last night where I've put a video up about putting Imperial Bow into a blue steel list.
Oh, I love that card.
And it's
Don't get
just
me started.
it's just that thing of like, well, red purple's basically had that card with Maui's fishhook. For so, like they've had a better version of it almost, really, haven't they? It's
Yeah.
if there's a Maui out, it's free. It does more work. You can pick
Mhm.
any target as well, but like we're going, well, we need to cover the genie now, so we're playing this inferior version, I'd say, because you need to have
Yes.
heroes on the board. Still costs one to use. It doesn't have a ability to be free. But yeah, I think it's that top level play of like, right, so I think people are going to win their 5 rounds of Swiss by playing a card like the Genie and just getting lots of lore of it. So how do we stop
And no
that?
one would expect it too, right? Like if
Yeah.
you play something like comparable, like going to open meta, like I can see it being like a blowout, just having a Imperial Ball in play. And especially if you're going to a combination of steel, there is a lot of heroes like characters that we can take advantage of, especially with the new addition of Calhoun. Like she's a menace, like just
Mm.
slowing down the board and allow you to execute your plan. And
Yeah.
then I think Robin Hood is a very strong contender going to this kind of fast-paced meta as well.
Yeah.
Especially if you shift it on three, how they're gonna stop a 3/6 body with a 3/2 or a 2/2.
Yeah, as you mentioned with Robin Hood, sort of, it fell out of favor because it just had such a bad game into red blue, and even sometimes into red purple if you're on the draw and they can Maui rush into it and kill it early.
Mm.
But I see that card coming back, and also it's just worth mentioning red blue's sort of been put on the sidelines recently, and I've seen even a lot of the top red blue players just basically talk about how bad it is right now, how rough their matchups are. I don't think it's a bad deck. I think it's a very strong contender. I could honestly see it winning a pod and LCQ. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Red Blue is at an interesting spot, um, especially going to open meta and a best of two. There's just so many unknown variables where it can just catch you off guard, and I think that's what Red Blue players are feeling, where you can just randomly lose to a hyper aggro or a burn deck,
Mm,
and then if you get into a pod where like there's like multiple of them, you're not gonna make it to top cut. But I think if it's like if the best of three, like red blue is the deck that excels, like because they probably have the most oppressive line, being able to shift ramp up uh, by
mm,
turn two and small CCU hyper ramp to big CCU, and that's technically their best line to deal with these sort of aggro decks. But then in a best of two format, how consistently can you get that?
yeah.
So I think that's where Red Bull players are a little bit discouraged, where like giving that how fast the meta is at the moment, it's just harder to win in a best of two uh, game.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's really worth mentioning as well that yeah, there's some decks I think just generally struggle in best of two, and as a blue steel player, I could say that's one of the decks that struggles in best of two. And it's not the play draw comparison because that also is an issue, but it's just sometimes you're going to have games where the deck doesn't work, and that tends to be ramp decks because you
Yes.
know over 9 rounds, 18 games, you're going to have an X amount of games where you do not hit ramp or you're going to miss it, or you're just going to have such a bad hand that you lose the game. And I've had that in
Or
events as well.
Fear Flaversham.
Yeah,
There's that too.
yeah, you could. It's loads of variables of you could ramp, miss the Flavisham, you could, or you could get the Flavisham, not the ramp, and your deck's just not functioning, and your opponent's on red purple, and all they have to do is play characters and turn sideways for a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's completely fine. But I think in best of three, you can sort of experiment with that a bit more. You got 3 games, and as you say, I don't think the play on the draw should affect the deck too much. It does for some decks, but
Mhm.
yeah, I think there should be more decks that have just a better chance. I think blue still has a better chance in a best of three field. Just getting like, okay, I could have one of those write-off games and still get a 2-1 and win the round. So I think there'll be loads of decks like that could still thrive in this event.
Yeah, I think what makes Blue Steel special going to this set also is like, especially if you go a little bit lower to the ground or possibly tech like fire the cannons with Calhoun is like I think once again like I think we all see like the meta being so much faster. Steel just has the ability to answer these more aggressive cards opposed to red blue. They only have brawl.
Mm,
And sometimes just brawling a character and you shut off your whole turn it kind of feels bad. It's almost like a losing play if you have to like brawl a merfolk
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
survive.
Just to get another
Yeah.
turn in. Yeah. No, I mean, prior to this set, the most powerful, but probably the easiest matchup for Blue Steel was Green Purple because it was still a matchup where Tinkerbell and Swords cleared the entire board. To be fair, if you just put a Tinkerbell on the board, it made things very awkward for them or turning things sideways
Mm,
because it could instantly start 2 for 1ing. But what I found in this meta is, especially with the sort of Cheech and No Will, you can still quill, you can ramp put the Tinkerbell out, but a lot of their stuff's evasive, and she's not going to be killing the genie. And then as
yeah.
soon as you start dealing damage and putting damage places, and you've got floating damage on your characters, you get punished by the Go-Go. Or you quest with the Hiram, and then they hit it, and then you get punished by the Go-Go. So you're in this weird spot now where one of these matchups that used to be really free has gone completely the other direction. But I think, as you say, Blue still is should be the deck that can answer it the most. As much as I just ranted there about complaining about a ton of cards, I think if Blue Steel was able to answer the genie in an effective way, like you've seen, like if you put Calhoun and Imperial Bow, the deck would just be fairly powerful. I think it would just
Yes.
easily walk this meta. Everyone's low to the ground. You're able to get Tinkerbells out early on. It's not like really negative towards your win con to quill into a Tinkerbell.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think Blue Steel's in a really good spot. It does need a bit of tinkering. And as you say, we don't have that online environment like we used to have with Pixelborn, where we saw like the meta got figured out in the first week because
Yeah.
like thousands of games were played and all of them were live
Yeah.
streamed as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's also without these sort of online clients, we sort of already seen the disparity in terms of levels of play when it comes to a professional player that puts in hours and hours of testing, opposed to someone just tries to take that deck and then pilot it. And
Mm,
obviously, they're not going to be able to pilot it at a highest level because they don't see the right lines into certain matchups. Whereas someone who designed it a certain way to combat the current meta will be uh, in a big advantage.
mm.
I would say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, no, entirely, and like you sort of a good thing to note, sort of the top RP lists have cut a lot of locations. A lot of them are just saying like, well, I fear sort of playing into 4x crab metas and stuff like that, which
Mhm.
makes sense. You don't want to play a card that's pretty dead in a meta. But then, and then if you're playing at that level and you're practicing at that level and you think, all right, no one's playing location hate, and then you go play locally or you go play, some online environment like Connect, and you're like, why are you still playing 4x library? Like, I was told at the top level, no one's playing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. And then of course someone might just pick up a deck that they've net decked, and they're like, don't really know why you've got in a blurple list Wendy Darling and Elsa or something like that, and they're just playing these things on the board because
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's the list I found, but I don't really know what the lines are here. Yeah, that's
But
definitely
I
the
find
meta.
that's kind of like the beauty of Lorcana, though.
Mm,
Like you end up going backwards each set, cycling older cards that, and they become relevant again,
yeah.
just because the meta ends up favoring a certain line of play. So you go backwards to counteract the line of play.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh, definitely. I
I
mean,
think that's the beauty of it. You're I think like you having these cards, you don't feel like I would say like you're not losing value playing the
mm.
card game.
Yeah, no, I mean, as a Blue Steel player, we look at the new set and go, right, we didn't really get any new cards. We got maybe one or two. We have to look at set two again. We did that with Kronk, and we've done that with the Imperial Bow as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, all of this stuff's really great. So sort of yeah, to round it off, sort of going into this event, I don't believe you're attending either of them, i.e. the Europe one or the NA one.
Unfortunately,
No,
not.
no.
But I'll be cheering my teammates on the sideline.
Oh, so yeah, if you were to go to Paris on Friday and compete this week, what would be if I could ask, what would you bring?
I will definitely bring in Green Steel.
Mm,
I think it's a deck where people are sleeping on it because the current build hasn't had that much success.
mm,
But the builds that I've been testing, I just believe if you can warp it sort of way to combat where the direction is going, it will definitely be a wrecking ball.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no, I think for sure. And we have that thing every set. We go, RP's dead, green still, and discard's not a thing.
yeah,
And then the events come around and we go, oh, wait a minute, those decks still exist. They top and win the event.
yeah,
So we go, yeah, no, that's always been making people discard cards is good, and red purple was just consistent.
yes.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's just like we end up going on this full circle here.
Yeah.
It's sort of like beginning aggro's the most dominant, and next thing you know is our red blue, and then next thing you know, red blue is getting beat by like discard or red purple.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it just goes round in a circle every time, and it's the new fancy toys that green purple is. But I think
Mhm.
eventually, I think even some of the top tier green to purple players, and this is not giving away from Artifacts because he tweets very much about how green purple is a mid deck, and it's
Yeah.
not very good. So I think he might have played the games into these steel removal decks and just realised that it maybe doesn't perform as well at certain levels.
Yeah.
But for myself, sort of, yeah, of course I bring blue steel, and what I'd noticed is there are some fun cards in there that really could catch people out. I think if you, I mean, as much as I complained about the card Twin Fire, I realized even that, like, it can easily catch someone out where they go too wide. They
Yeah.
think, I can't get punished. I could maybe get punished by fire the cannons, but both of these things are safe. And then you twin fire and take them both out. And I think in like putting interesting cards like that, even the bow, as we keep mentioning, it's like right, everything's got evasive, they can't touch it, and then you buff Calhoun, take out a genie, and gain 2 law. You know?
I personally think Twin Fire is a insane card right now.
Yeah,
Like, especially if you say like people are following meta trends. Like you blowing up a merfolk and a bonsai, like
exactly. Yeah.
literally just you turn the table.
Mm,
Or even like a small Cindy and a piglet for in the Steel Song.
mm.
Like for them to lose like those two characters early, like the whole momentum just shift.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've noticed it the same as well. And the discarding a card from your hand isn't the best in the world, but if you're on the draw and maybe your hands are bricked anyway, so
Yes.
you're just throwing a
Get
card
rid
that
of
you
those wheels.
yeah, yeah, you're just throwing away a card that you really didn't want to have in the hand. As you
Yeah.
say, it feels right now having board control and stopping them from gaining lore feels a lot more important than the hand economy, which does feel really weird
Yeah.
in a TCG. But I'd prefer to have less cards in hand and more stuff on board and more control on the board. Because there's also as well,
Yeah.
if red isn't as popular, the idea of a board wipe or resetting the board just doesn't become as common. It's just who's gone wider and who can control it more.
Yeah, I like that. We're going to like a style of play where it's more interactive, where
Mm,
you really have to checkmate the first 3, 4 turns and gain control and maintain control to win the game.
yeah, yeah. I think
It's
someone
almost
said,
like a battle of chess at the moment.
yeah, I think someone said if your deck doesn't do anything impactful from turns 1 to 4, maybe 1 to 3, your deck's not going to work in this meta right now, which is
Yeah.
completely. I think it's true, and it's sort of why these Sapphire decks are struggling a little bit. You are ramping, which is impactful, but
Hmm.
to your opponent, they're like, well, that impact's not going to pay off until maybe 1 or 2 more turns when you actually play with
Yeah.
that extra ink. Um,
Especially when do I have like 2, 3 merfolks on a bonsai.
Yeah, and if you're
they're,
just
they're
going
third
sail
way
quill,
winning.
yeah, 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 no, I think there'll be some interesting techs in there. I think a steel deck will probably maybe take the LCQ, and definitely I'm bringing blue steel and trying to like utilize some more of those interesting steel cards that maybe just will catch people out
I
for
wish you
sure.
good luck, man. I'm interested. I'm excited to see some Harlan Spice going on in the LCQ.
Harlan Spice, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Harlan Spice.
I'm sure it would go well. Yeah, I'm very excited for it. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for the chat. And yeah, I'll link your
Thank you as
channel.
well.
And like I say, great Green Steel player, always someone I go to talk about Green Steel. So thank you, man.
Great Blue Seal player yourself.
Oh, thank
Someone
you very
I look up
much.
to.
Oh, look up to. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, man. All right, guys. See you.